signed it, it was basically deciding also that if you were caught cheating and signing this code, disciplinary action would be taken. Do you think that that's something that should be implemented with the ethic, or no?
She said that at a previous institution, they had an honor code and they would all sign it, and that was basically saying that if you were caught cheating, that you were going to be held responsible because you signed the exam. Is that correct? Okay. And this is possible at Worcester. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that if we were to have that, I don't know. I mean, maybe students wouldn't sign it, and then if they got caught, they would say, "Well, I didn't sign that then." But I think the kind of catch is the fact that everyone signs it when they come here as a first year. Now, granted, they may not walk up to the table, but I think the majority do because the rows are dismissed and everyone goes up and they get a pen and they get to shake the president's hand, which is pretty cool if you're a first year. So I think that by having that sort of like caveat, I think it would probably be a little bit more successful. Yeah.
You said that it would be a good idea, or we would have to work our way to unsupervised exams. How exactly would students be able to earn their teacher's trust? Like, what would have to happen in order for that to be implemented?
She said, how do we get to the place of unsupervised exams? How would that happen? And I think that that's a really complicated question, which is probably why I didn't talk about it that much. I think that instead of being passive, we need to be a little bit more active. You know, like, I myself, last week in an exam, the person like 2 rows away from me, I specifically saw them just change their answers. And after class, I was like, hey, like, I kind of saw that. And that really only hurt you. Like, I think having those kinds of conversations and holding our peers accountable instead of, telling on them like to professors and things like that. I think that could probably be more. This needs to be like a grassroots. Can't be administration like pushing people down and this is the law. Like, this needs to be something that we hold each other accountable for. So I think that would be a good way to start, at least. Yeah.
In terms of peer responsibility, not to go back to elementary school or anything, but that having sort of a peer like hall monitor kind of thing was kind of an active approach to making sure that your peers are kind of helping you instead of having an administrative force. So do you think that a similar sort of program, like for example the Lowry managers, what have you, sort of having more of a guard and just sort of approaching people on their own, do you think that would be a better way of approaching a problem on a peer level instead of making it sort of more authoritative?
Okay, so in comparison to elementary school, having like hall monitors doing sort of more of a peer accountability program where they're actually like people who like apply for the job or like are intending to. Okay. I don't know. I think that could still probably create like a hierarchical effect. I don't know, at least in my elementary school, people who did that were on power trips. And they're like, I am the hall monitor. So I think that you would have to be really careful of things like that. And I think the whole point of this is to have sort of 1,800 students, moral revolution all over the place. So I would be really nervous that, I don't think the goal of this is to have sort of laws or, I think maybe, like we have students helping students and we have these places where people can go to anonymously chat about things that are, occurring with them, and that's more of just kind of a finalist thing. And you have RAs for that if you need to, be like, I don't know how to deal with the situation. So I think we have a lot of resources that are already in place, and I'm afraid that may make people a little bit too preachy, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say you're a really good speaker. But I know students that skipped out on the voice ethic thing we had, and so they never actually signed it. Like, what do you think we should do with them? They never actually technically signed it.
So he said if people skip out on the first year signing ceremony, which no one ever misses anything during freshman orientation, right? I think, well, we had this year we had our first annual civility week hosted by Mr. Ethic. I don't know if you remember that. We had like a dance of moms and stuff. And we had kind of the revealing ceremony of the book, and we had an open signing at that time. Not too many students took advantage of that, probably because it was just poorly advertised, but the book that will be on display in Lowry, I'm sure if you as a student who missed that freshman orientation signing, went to the Dean of Students office and said, hey, Dean Holmes, like, I totally skipped out on that because I was just exhausted, but I kind of see how this is a big deal. Could I sign it? Like, I'm sure he has the key, so he could, get the pages for you and you could sign that, and that could be, just because you don't sign it then doesn't mean that you can't make that commitment at any time, I think, during your 4 years. I think Dean Holmes would be really, really receptive to that.
And also, like, do you think that Worcester ethics should be like law? Like, Right now, it just kind of seems like a thing you just sign.
He asked if it should be a law or something you just sign.
Like how strict is it? Like what?
Well,
If
Dean
you don't
Holmes,
sign it or you punish?
when Dean Holmes was hired, they said, or when he was interviewed, I've talked to them about this, they said, so if you needed to create an honor code, what would you do? And he said, well, I wouldn't, because it's not something that needs to come from administration. It needs to be something that comes from students. And so then when they hired him and he came on, they were like, okay, we need you to start an honor code. He was like, no, I don't think you understood me. Like, I will not do this. This has to be something that students feel they need to do. And I think that's what the Scots Key is for. You know, judicial board, those are the kind of sanctions that we have that are through the Scots Key, and I think the Worcester ethic is more of a cultural. So I don't think it should be viewed as a law. I think it should be more of just holding people accountable for their actions on a peer basis. Now, granted, you know, you see someone cheating a lot and they don't really do anything about it. I think we have a responsibility because that's only hurting our community and its reputation. So I think we have a responsibility to eventually take that a step higher. But if that ends up happening, I'm sure at that point that the professors would probably be involved and there probably would be, you know, Dean Cruzman involved for academic violations and things